Doing well. We're in Luke chapter 9. Luke chapter 9. We're going to pick up with verse 10. This is where we left off. So we're going to pick up there. Hope you're reading along as time allows you, because we again are not taking the time to do that. So it'll fill in a lot of blanks if you'll read it. And obviously, I'm not giving you assigned readings because I just want you to read it. And if you get to the end of the gospel, start all over again. Because you just get something new every time. So we're in Luke chapter 9. We'll look at start with verse 10 here in just a moment. Let's have a word of prayer. Father, you bless us, and for that we're grateful. We thank you for the opportunity to be here in the middle of the week to encourage each other, to build each other up, and at this moment to take our minds and our hearts off of the cares and the worries and the anxiousness and the responsibilities and the to-do things that we need to accomplish on this earth, and instead we can just have our heart and our mind focused on you and your word, especially as we're going through the Gospel of Luke and as we take a look at the life of Jesus, whose life we're supposed to pattern our life after, whose steps we're supposed to walk in, and whose image that you're conforming us to. We pray, Father, that we have come with hearts and minds ready to receive what you have to say, and it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay, so remember we skipped over a good portion of Luke 8, but that's just to try to make use of the time that we have. The disciples, the apostles specifically, were in the boat. Jesus saves them. At the beginning of chapter 9, we talked about this briefly, how he sends the 12 out, gives them their commission, gives them their power, their authority, and to go do amazing things. We're gonna combine 7, 8, and 9. With a little bit later in the chapter. So we're going to pick up verse 10. And as you notice in verse 10, the apostles return. Don't know how much time has passed. It could be a week, could be a month. All we know is just that time has returned. And if you look at Matthew's version and Mark's version, they actually are successful in their limited commission. Very successful. And we'll talk, and they'll mention some of that a little bit later. But they're very successful. But what is, in verse 10, when they return, what does Jesus do with the 12? When they return, what does Jesus do with the 12? He does something. Okay, so he takes them off away from the crowds. Why not capitalize on the success and let's go to another region. Let's go to another place. Why do that? Why take them to a desolate place? Why take them out into a wilderness place? Everybody knows you strike while the iron is hot. So if you've had success, you're excited, you're passionate, let's just keep going. Why does he take them to a private place, a desolate place? Okay. So if you look at Matthew and Mark, it's for two reasons. One is for them to rest. That's what Mark tells us. And then Matthew says, it's essentially, tell me what you got. Tell me about your success. Tell me what happened. And it's almost serving like a little miniature retreat. Just because you've had the success doesn't mean, because our temptation is just to keep going and going and going. We don't want to lose the momentum, and you can only go so much. Even if you've had the success, you got to take a little while to take a break. You got to do all of that. And there's a lesson for us. You can only go so much. You can only spin your will so much. You can only do so much. At some point, you've got to retreat, and you've got to recover, and you've got to give the report, and you've got to enjoy all of the success that may be coming. But at some point, you got to stop. And we know this, because if we don't intentionally do it, our body will force us to do it. There's only so much your body can do. So I just wanted to highlight that for a brief moment, that even Jesus, even at the height of their first successful mission, still pulls them to the side and says, you need to take a break. You need to recover. Just because you had the success doesn't mean you keep on going. And we'll talk ourselves into that. And to a certain extent, we can become a Pharaoh. We can become a Pharaoh, just go and go and go and go and go and go and go until you can't go anymore. Go ahead.
Just maybe a thin layer on top of that. He's acting like that.
Great point.
They've been away, they've been separated.
Yep. a rabbi and then a shepherd as well. So he's doing all of those simultaneously. So that sets the stage. So all of that is happening. That sets the stage for the miracle of the 5,000, which we covered on Sunday, and we're going to cover it again, but from a different perspective. Again, a reminder about this miracle. It's one of the very few that is recorded in all 4 gospel accounts. So that ought to tell us something. Always remember, one of the rules of actual Bible study, not devotional reading, but Bible study, when a word, a phrase, an event, a miracle, if something is repeated, that ought to be just your first clue that this is something important. This phrase is repeated, this event's repeated, and if all 4 gospel writers, moved by the Spirit, inspired by the Spirit, out of all the miracles that he performed, this is one of the few that's recorded in all 4, that ought to tell us something. So you got to spend some time with it. When Jesus takes them, he takes them to a place called Bethsaida. And just to kind of highlight it, this, again, tell you where we're at, that you've got Bethsaida obviously right here with the little red dot. And it's very possible that the apostles, in their limited commission, were going around, up and down the coast on this side. So Tiberias, Magdala, where Mary would have been from, Gennesaret, Capernaum, all of these little areas where the apostles, that's very possible where they're going. And they're having a lot of success. Bethsaida's in that northeast corner. It is remote, and to a certain extent, it's pretty difficult to get to. So the crowd that gathers is very possible that that's the crowd that the apostles had success with. So that's possible. I'm not going to say that is for sure. But where do 5,000 people come from, right? You just don't have that in the ancient Near East. You just don't have... It's unheard of. They would be amazed that we have a county of over 1 million people in a city, Raleigh itself, of over 450,000. That just would be amazing to them. Outside of Rome, maybe Athens, few other places. So 5,000 men, not counting women and children, where they all come from, it's very possible that they're coming from the success of the apostles, and they just have followed them. I can't say for sure, but it's very possible that you have all of this. So they would have been up here, and just based on the map, you see the green, lush, everything. This is kind of that grayish, desolate area. Jesus takes them to where he thinks the crowd wouldn't go, and lo and behold, what does the crowd do? They find them. They find them. So look at verse 11. Consider a couple of questions just to ask. How does Jesus view the crowd when the crowd finds them? He welcomes them. Now he and the 12 have removed themselves from the public for the purpose of resting. Let's share the success stories. To Scott's point, this rabbi / shepherd, let's kind of just close off the world for a little bit. Let's just do all of that. And the crowd just prevails. And he welcomes them. If you're the 12, you're even Jesus. How in the world do you have an attitude of welcoming them when it would have been very easy to be annoyed, inconvenienced? Don't these people know? Can't they wait a couple hours? I mean, things like that. How does he have an attitude? In the midst of an intentional, we're going to get away, we're not going to do anything, let's just rest, let's recover, let's share, let's sharpen each other. Again, Scott, your point, that rabbi, I didn't really think of it that perspective, let me refuel you. How do you keep an attitude of welcoming and hospitality and not be annoyed? Okay, all right.
What the prize is for them, and how could you not?
Okay, all right. So eyes on the prize, but specifically the mission, which makes sense. I like how you use that because they just came from a mission. So I don't have to go, 30, 40, 50 miles to accomplish the mission. Actually, the mission's coming to us. Okay, what else? And I use the word annoyed, I use the word inconvenienced, because when we've done that, even on our own homes, I can't believe they're calling it this out. You know, don't they know what kind of day we had? You know, so go ahead.
He loves them.
Ah, he loves them. Go ahead.
I was going to say the same thing a different way.
Go ahead.
And from the point of view of Jesus being God, these people are seekers. They're not just food seekers, because they apparently spend the day and then end up needing a meal. But they were seekers, and God must have recognized that. I see that as similar to He loved them.
Okay.
He recognized they were God seekers.
Okay, so that love, for sure. And then in that love, I'm going to recognize, let's just assume for a moment, again, we don't know for sure, but let's just assume for a moment that crowd did gather right here. And they're coming, and they're coming, and they're coming, and their ranks just swell. But at this specific moment, they're not coming with ulterior motive. The next day, Jesus will do that. We covered that Sunday. But on this specific day, they're actually, we want to meet Jesus, hear Jesus, whatever that may have been. So who knows whether I'd get that opportunity again. I mean, besides, it's 5,000 people. What else can you think of? And the reason we're going through this exercise is because we're going to have those moments where we've intentionally planned something, and the call is going to come, the person's going to need something, even if it's a family member, you know, under your own roof. And it's, can I just have one moment where somebody doesn't need me? Can I have one moment where something, I don't have to put out a fire or whatever it may be? Go ahead.
Back on the map, this is random, but from Bethsaida down to Tiberias, I just looked at it. It's about a 5-hour walk.
A 5-hour walk.
Yeah, so the crowd could have found out, you know, where it travels very fastly, and they could have went there the same day.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Coastline.
Okay. Yeah, that's a really good point. I'm glad, if you didn't hear what he had to say, just the distance, if you're going from here, Tiberias, all the way up to Bethsaida, 5-hour walk, is that, okay, 5-hour walk. So it's easily done in a day. And it's very possible it's a 2-day trip just to break it up with children, because we got to assume that's there. But either way, you're right. So just from the crowd perspective, I mean, that's actually amazing, David, to your point. It says a lot about them on that particular day and moment, about their heart, their mind, so forth and so on. Go ahead.
They also, Jesus also went to work. He healed all of them that needed it.
Okay.
So that really required his attention with them.
It did. Go ahead.
So, kind of along the lines of a mission and not a love, for God is not confined by time. Jesus understands that his time is limited, and there's a sense of urgency. And if Jesus has that, I think we do as well. We need to respond, we need to work, that our time is limited. And this is an opportunity that Jesus sees, and I would be annoyed, I would be tired.
Yep.
He welcomes in and recognizes that I only have so much time left.
Yeah.
He takes the opportunity to do something.
That's a really, really good point. So the eyes on the prize and the mission, but the other is at least bound by time. Time is fleeting, and time is short, time is limited. And even if I intentionally plan for the rest and, you know, getting away or whatever that may be, if I know that, there's a sense of urgency, coupled with, at this moment, a decision that the crowd means well. And a lot of the time we're annoyed or whatever because the other person doesn't mean well. We've already decided something. And in this case, I'm willing to be interrupted. But you know that Jesus has already shown us that? Because in the previous chapter, the woman with the issue of blood interrupted him on his way to Jairus' house. And he stopped and gave her attention. Whether it's an individual or whether it's a crowd, we're going to be interrupted. And sometimes it will be in the most inconvenient and uncomfortable way. But you want to be conformed to the image of Jesus? You want to have the heart like Jesus? You roll with the interruption. You roll with the inconvenience. You accept that it's part of the mission. The mission, yes, is the people, but part of it is that there will be times where I'm interrupted. And a brother's going to need me, a sister's going to need me, and hopefully there's somebody who's looking for Jesus that'll need me. And maybe I'm tired, but I'm willing to have dinner with them so we can talk about Jesus things. I'm willing to be inconvenienced. I'm willing to cut this short. I'm willing to have all of this because he was willing to do it. And at the root of all of it is what you said, is love. And Matthew and Mark will say it's compassion. They'll use love in terms of compassion. That's something that before we see the disciples, we got to be able to look at people the way that he sees people. They are not inconveniences. People are not interruptions. People are not just simple problems to be solved and then go on your way. I know we have a lot on our plates. I know we have a lot to do. I know because of all of that, I would get annoyed. I would get inconvenienced. I would kind of huff and puff and murmur and grumble. But we only get so many opportunities with people, especially if we want them to know about Jesus. That means that sometimes we got to be inconvenienced. Sometimes we got to be annoyed because there's something bigger, and that's the mission in that regard. So some have already acknowledged it. In verse 12, what's the problem that's unfolding in front of everybody's eyes? So this crowd has made it. They've been there all day listening to his teaching, and lo and behold, somebody just looks up, and what do they see? What's the problem? All right, the night is coming. All right, it's getting late in the day, but there's something else that's happened too. Okay, nobody has had anything to eat. And it's late in the day, and this, Alan, puts into perspective what you had to say. 5 hours may be able to be done in a day, but 5 hours when you're hungry and you haven't eaten all day, it's a whole different story. And those poor parents, if they happen to have brought their children, who else is probably hungry? Those of us that have ever had small children when they're hungry, or those of us that are adults and our inner child comes out because we're hungry, everything just changes. The mood, the dynamics, all of that. Go ahead. Okay, and that's that one problem begets another one. Not only food that's not there, but you got to assume drink, some sort of water, some sort of wine or something, and then where are they going to sleep? Because if we actually take the time to feed them, we take the time to do all of this, we're also going to have to take the time to find them a place to stay. Because we can't, again, send them by night 5 hours back, because that's some treacherous territory. So you have all of this. So with all of that said, what's the solution from the 12? When it finally just, it's getting late, nobody has eaten, we're a ways away from any roof over our head, what is their solution? What is the 12? What is their solution?
I think it might be the first time that somebody said to a preacher, you better finish up so they can get the IHOP.
You better hurry up and get done. Yeah. Okay. Why is that their solution? Okay, on one hand, they can't see another. Okay, it could be that. I'm going to give another angle of that, but that could be part of it, yes? Okay, and why do they not have anything?
Because they were expecting Jesus to have, they were in a remote area themselves.
Okay.
So they hadn't really planned anything.
Okay.
Other than to be with Jesus in this remote area and rest.
Yeah, okay. And there's something you were whispering.
They weren't supposed to take anything when they went out. When they came back, they still shouldn't have anything.
Okay, so you got a double whammy. You're in a rock and a hard place. So on one hand, they've returned with all the success, but remember, no bag, no money, nothing. You just take what you got and you go out. And they're supposed to learn, full-on dependence for themselves. Now they've returned and it's successful, and Jesus says, we're going to go to a desolate place, which means that even for the 13 of them, it's not like we've just got anything laying around. It's not like we can run to the store and buy a couple of frozen dinners and let's see what we can come up with. And then it's the desert. What's the expectation? And 5,000 people, what are the chances 5,000 people are going to walk 5 hours to listen and then stay all day and listen? Because that's where we're at. So all of this, so maybe they can't see past themselves, but I actually would think that it's just to them, it's the most logical decision to be made. We didn't go out with anything. We didn't come back with anything. We came to the desert, and it's really supposed to be the 13 of us. So that's easier to manage. And it could be part of the inconvenience. That may be there, but I used to think that, and less likely of that, but that's a possibility nonetheless. Go ahead, Beth.
Didn't they just come from this scene where they were on the boat
Yes.
and Jesus solved that problem, feeding 5,000? That's why I said they couldn't see past. They could only see past some way that they could solve it, but they didn't see how he
Yeah.
could solve it.
Now, I would agree, and I can't blame them, though, because what does Jesus tell them to do? That's the last bullet point. What does he tell them to do? Do you think he knows that they don't have anything? Do you think he knows they're in a desolate place? Do you think he knows that they've traveled five hours and it's 5,000 men, not counting women and children? Do you think he knows all the things that he's doing? So the question is why is that his solution? Why does he turn, knowing all of those factors? You give them something to eat. Don't send them away. You do it. Sending them away is not an option. Here's your option. Here's your only option. You give them something. But he knows all of this. So why is that his solution?
Given them power before they left. So maybe they hadn't used it all, and he was
That's a possibility. It could be a learning experience, and I would agree with you. The question is what is the learning? This is the rabbi part that's coming out. This is the shepherd part that's coming out. Go ahead.
I think he's continuing to try to show them who he is.
Okay. Yeah.
The paradox, he said it last class. Things have changed. I am here.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's not going to do it like Hollywood style, although this is sort of Hollywood style.
Yeah.
But, dribs and drabs, even though they're amazing, he's showing them who he is.
And what several commentators would say that this is one of the most non-miraculous miracles he performs, because there's just no flash. There's no, you mentioned the Hollywood, there's just no boom and it just magically appears. It's just a simple blessing of whatever's available, and it just continues. And I just wonder what that is like to see that happening. Yes, Teddy.
I saw a movie, the 12 disciples, when the Romans came and got Jesus. One of the 12 disciples cut one of the ears off the soldier,
Mm-hmm.
and God healed the soldier's ear.
He did.
Why wasn't that brought up to the king and said that this guy's got to be the real king and heal me?
When we get to the end of the gospel, we'll cover that. That was Peter who took out his sword and cut off the right ear of Malchus, is his name. But when we get there, we'll cover it, but that's a really good point. But he continues to reveal himself either way. So that's a really good point, Teddy. I think the other thing is, and this is Jesus, and this is, so if you got to be willing to be inconvenienced, you also got to be willing to be uncomfortable. And there's nothing more uncomfortable than when you realize you literally cannot do anything about what's in front of you. You want us to give them something to eat? We don't even have the material. So we have power and authority, but we are able to work with things in our possession to do that. We literally do not have anything in our possession to feed 5,000 people plus women and children. There is nothing more hopeless and nothing more helpless than when you're staring down at something or someone and there is literally nothing you can do. And Jesus puts them in that position. They do. That is a hard thing to do. As a matter of fact, it's an impossible thing to do. And here's the question. This is not a question, but it's a parallel. Tell me somebody who was told that she was going to participate in something that only God could do. And the angel will actually tell her, when she's amazed at the news, the angel will say, yeah, with human beings this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. You remember her name? I wonder if the 12 need to learn the same lesson. Are there times where Jesus intentionally puts his disciples in a position that you need to know that there are just some things. Success, you're on the heels of success. You're on cloud nine. I gave you power. I gave you authority. But now you're meeting a situation that you yourself cannot literally do anything about. And when that happens, who and where do you go? That's the first lesson of this. And make no mistake, you and I will be there too. And when that happens, and it's because you're watching your child do something, you're watching work unfold in a way that you don't want it to unfold, you're watching your health unfold, the list goes on, and you look at your spouse, you look at yourself, and you say, I wish I could do something, and I literally cannot do anything. When that happens, who do you go to, and where do you go, and why?
Jesus just told them when they were on the boat that they had little faith.
Yeah.
And he is still with them, and he saw what he did to the weather. So they should have faith that if he says you feed them, he had a solution.
And that is exactly David and Maybell. That's the lesson. Is Jesus only good on a boat in the middle of the storm? Or can he do something in a desert with 5,000 people? And this is the revealing of himself. Is he bound by circumstances? Is he bound by the impossible? Is he bound? Is he limited by what's in front? Is there ever a moment where Jesus looks at a person and or situation and says, it's too big for me. I can't do anything about that. I'm sorry. I wish I could help you. Have you ever told that to somebody? I'm sorry. Thank you for sharing, but I'm sorry. I wish I could help you, but I can't do anything. Is there anything like that that comes out of Jesus' mouth? No. And the first learning is the God in the boat is the same as the God in the desert. And it doesn't matter what's happening. It's not impossible. This is how faith grows. But faith grows not based on the miracle. The first and foremost is that what did he do in the prior event? What did he do in the prior experience? Did he feed us bread in the boat? Did he solve the storm? Did he calm the waves? What makes me think that if he did it there and it worked, that he can't do it here? What makes me believe that over here he can do whatever he wants and everything listens to him, but over here he's limited? Fear, doubt, worry, the list could go on and on. Or, as he said it, rocks and thorns. It's still a matter of the heart. Everybody following? It's not just that he provides. The first thing is there a situation that he can't overcome? And the answer is no. Now, I may know it here, and it may take time for this to catch up, but that's okay. That's part of it. It's a learning curve. But this is us. You're going to face, and I'm going to face, times where we literally cannot do anything about what's in front of us. You can't change it. You can't pray your way out of it in the sense that, you're just going to say amen and it's all done. You can't open a Bible verse and apply the Bible verse and it's all better now. What do you do when that's the case? And if you look at the wisdom of the world tells us what? When you're met with something impossible, who and what do you turn to? What does the wisdom of the world tell us? What do people turn to? What are things that they turn to? Drink, alcohol, some sort of drug. Government will take care of it. Some turn into hopelessness and live the rest of their life with despair. People handle things so different. This is why your faith and mine matters so much and why it needs to be constantly fed and nurtured. Because just because you're saved out of the boat doesn't mean that the desert isn't right around the corner. And he's still God in both situations. Who, what, and why when that's met. Yes, ma'am.
I think in verse 13 it's interesting, when he asked them, "Did you give them something to eat?" They have a reply. They did look for a solution, but they didn't think that solution could work for that situation.
Good point.
And I think for us, sometimes, when in our hopelessness, we don't even look for a solution.
Yep.
Even if we can't answer that problem right then, maybe we should be at least thinking about a solution, because he uses that solution for the miracle.
He does.
And sometimes we just have to have just a little faith. It
Yes.
doesn't have to be big or in some way show up the solution, but just at least attempt to work on something.
Yeah.
And that's what they do here.
It is, and they do that, and it comes from the most unlikeliest of place. So sometimes we talk ourselves out of why, it's a little boy, and it's a lunch, and it's most likely his lunch, so it's enough just to feed him. Maybe enough to feed his family if he was with his family. So you make a good point. We'll kind of dismiss it, or we'll sell it short. And if we're, again, thinking that we're the source of the miracle or the source of the solution, well, sure we can. But it's the age-old thing that you've heard. If you take just a little bit, he can turn it into a lot. There's the faith. And he's not asking in any of this a mountain size. I just need you to know that I can do whatever in this situation because over here, I did the same thing. It just was different. Don't talk yourself into believing that I can't do something. So, some of the lessons. One, Jesus provides. What did he provide for them in the boat last week when we covered that story? Safety, peace, calm, deliverance. What does he provide in the desert? Food, comfort, compassion. You mentioned love a minute ago. The list could go on. He provides in all circumstances. So far, tell me a circumstance that Jesus has met. Anybody. Health, in this case food, some other need. Tell me one in nine and a half chapters that we've looked at in a couple months where he met a situation that was too big for him to handle. He cured an incurable disease named leprosy. He raised a dead boy, young man, the only son of a widow. Blind people come and their eyes are open. Lame people are brought to him and they walk. All the things that are impossible for men. It's the message to Mary is said in just about every chapter. It's just the echo of all of that. He provides whether there's a little or a lot. He actually provides, you mentioned this a minute ago, he provides when there's nothing. In the boat, what do they literally have? Nothing. And he provides a way. They have a little bit of food, and he provides. Is he not? The last time I checked, only God can do something with nothing. And that again goes to what Scott and others have mentioned in terms of revealing himself.
Are there any miracles or signs that were done by apostles, disciples, whatever, not Jesus, that involved creation of something from nothing, like with the bread? Sorry, with the fish.
No, I don't think so. That's a good question. I don't think so.
I couldn't think of any either. And in some ways, when he said to the disciples, the apostles, says, "You do something," he knew they couldn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And only God could create something from nothing.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I would put all the human miracles in that category.
Okay.
Something from nothing.
It's not food, but it's creating a condition that wasn't there.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
To me, it does involve a body healing. So, to me, it's
Okay. I didn't think about it just because I was, a leg is already there or, the eyes or whatever, but that makes sense, at least in a condition. Makes sense. I mean, something is absent from that regard. I will say this. Go ahead.
Kind of bouncing off what Wanda was saying, a few times in my life, when I didn't know what the answer was, I started off in a direction I thought I should go. And during the walk, either somebody came into my life that could help me, or there was something that was provided that I didn't have when I started. So like LaFonda was saying, he told him, you do it. Well, you have to start. And you might not have what you need when you get started, but somewhere God will put something there to help you get going. It might be a change of direction.
Yeah.
It might turn you around, and that's kind of what he did there. He started like, well, you do it. Well, they found a few little things, and then he provided the rest of what they needed to accomplish the goal.
Yeah. And that is a good parallel with the limited mission that they went on. Where are we supposed to sleep? That will be provided. Something will happen. You know, well, okay. Well, how are we going to eat when we wake up? Something along the way. I just need you to go.
Just get started.
Just get started. And the thing is you can get started if you know who is always with you, wherever it is that you're starting from. You know, that's a powerful thing to know. Yes, ma'am.
My feeling is God created us, so he knows there's that doubt in our lives.
Sure.
And he wants us to lean on him so much, but he wants us to listen to what he's saying. And like for me, I'm a control freak. So my first inclination is I'll just fix it myself.
Yep.
And that, we don't always realize that that's just the hard thing.
Yep.
So if we listen to those little nudges and really take into account why am I thinking this, or why would this come into my mind? A lot of times it's God's given us a little bit of a nudge to do the right thing.
Yeah. He'll allow the event to be where we have to. We had to make a decision. You're either going to be with me or not. You know, even if it's just a little, I can work with a little. I don't need you to have a lot of faith. We're not talking about a quota of faith, you know, because we're real quick. I just need more faith. You just need what you got. And then just start. I really like that, Britt. You just need to start with what you have. And if you put it in my hands, we can turn that into a lot. We can do a lot. Very quickly, what I will say about all of this is that this does explain, to a certain extent, what the first century church will do when they're formed. And they had all things in common. And each one put into the pile, and they distributed as they had need. And you see that twice in two different chapters. Part of the basis of that. We don't have a lot, but what we do have, we're going to put in the pile, and we're going to share, and we're going to give. And it may not alleviate every need, but we can do something with what's in front of us. And that's Peter and John when they're going up into the temple in Acts 3. The beggar needs money. We don't have money, but what we do have, we'll give you. And there's something to be said about a little boy. I don't have much. I wonder what it was like for Andrew to come to him and say, hey, can we use your lunch to feed all these people? I guess, if you want to try, go for it. And there's a lot of us who will talk ourselves out of helping somebody, in whatever the capacity is, because we've reasoned, I don't have what you need. Truth is, you got Jesus, you got everything that somebody needs. You just need to start. Go ahead. I know you're raising your hand.
I just didn't want to pass this story without bringing out that I think in the Jewish mind, a small food source that continues to feed many would bring up another store in their minds from a profit goal.
It does.
And might make them think they have a profit goal.
Well, and you're actually right. It's not what they'll think, that's actually what they'll say. And we talked about it a little bit, but the very next day after this miracle, they're still going to follow him. And that's when it shifts into the manna story. And what we'll see next week as we get into it is now that everybody, because of this miracle, who is this guy? And he'll ask the question, who do you say that I am? because now everybody's starting to talk. So I'm going to leave you with something as we go into this. A shift in the Gospel of Luke is now going to take place. The crowd, and what I mean by the crowd is the public in general, is going to start fading. And it's really going to just, if you think of watching a movie and the camera zooms in, we're zooming in on Jesus and we're zooming in on the 12. Doesn't mean the public's not important. Doesn't mean that they don't matter. But as Jesus is getting closer to Jerusalem, his time is coming. We gotta push the gas down a little bit, and he's got to prepare the 12. So I'm going to ask you this, and I want you to think about it for the next week. Why does Jesus ask, and to a certain extent press, the subject of his identity? Why is it, after all this so far, does he ask and does he press the subject of his identity? And I will say this, there are some people in our life that we need to ask and we need to press gently, but we need to press them to answer the question to. But why is it at this moment, this context, it's now time to start asking that question and pressing the subject of who do you believe that I am? And he's going to do that. So we'll pick up there next week. So I'm glad you're here. We'll get ready for our devotional.